Morning, my friends. I'm Pastor Ben Hayes from First Baptist Church, Dadeville, Alabama, bringing you our thought for the day on this terrific Tuesday. And I hope that you are having a great day so far. God is always good, and it's a good day or a good way to start your day by focusing on the Word and spending a little time in prayer. So join me. We're in 1 Timothy chapter 4, picking up in verse 7. Paul has been telling Timothy about what he needs to do as a young pastor. Listen, if you're a young pastor and you're watching this, I want you to understand you need an older pastor to help you, to mentor you, to guide you, because every one of us needs that, even as we get to be older pastors. But as Paul is telling Timothy what he needs to do to grow in his faith and to be the pastor that God's called him to do, he's told him, he said, you need to be nourished in the words of faith and of the good doctrine which you've carefully followed. Well, where did he get that from? He got it from the Apostle Paul. Paul had taught him what the faith was. He got it from his mama and his grandmother first, his faith in Jesus Christ. Then Paul came along and started helping him to understand the truth of the doctrines that he needed to know in order to be the kind of Christian that he needed to be the pastor that he needed to be. We all need that relationship. In fact, it doesn't matter whether you're a pastor or not. You need a mentor in your life, a spiritual mentor, someone who is older than you spiritually, someone who's more mature that can help guide you through the rough places. You might call them an accountability partner. You might call them a prayer partner. You might just call them your best friend. Whatever you call them, you need somebody that will speak the hard truth into your lives, into your life. And this is what Paul says. He says, not only do you need to do this to be nourished and nurtured, he says, but you need to reject profane and old wives' fables and exercise yourself towards godliness. Listen, there are a lot of things out there that people will talk about that really have absolutely nothing to do with the gospel. But in this particular case with Paul and Timothy, he was trying to help Timothy understand that some of those things that were going on in the church and in the community had no place in being a part of the church. He talks about these profane and old wives' fables. Have you ever heard some of those old wives' fables? I remember that I used to have a wart on my elbow, and my grandma told me that if I take my mom's dish rag and rub it on that wart and then go and take and bury the dish rag, it'd go away. That's an old wives' tale, right? You've heard some of those yourselves. Well, in this case, these were coming into the church. Things like cleanliness is next to godliness. You know, it's a good truth. It's a good saying, but it's not biblical. It's an old wives' tale. But some of those were taking a little too much precedence and priority within the teachings of the church. So much so that people were hanging on to some of these old wives' tales and not paying attention to the truth of the gospel. Things like, if you're going to become a Christian, you got to be a Jewish person first. You got to get circumcised. You got to follow the rules of the law. You got to do all these different things. It became gospel plus in order to be saved. Those are profane and old wives' fables. And Paul says, here's another thing that's important. Not only do you have to reject those kinds of teachings, those things that are outside of the Bible, those things that are anti-biblical, he says, you've got to understand that you need to exercise yourself toward godliness. What does that mean exactly? Well, it means that in the Christian life, we have a calling, and that calling is that we walk worthy of the calling. The calling is we've been called into relationship with Jesus. We've been given the hope and the salvation that we so desperately needed in order to overcome this sin-filled, sinful world. And now we have to walk worthy of that calling by exercising ourselves towards godliness. We have to live godly lives. That was another one of those old wives' fables that were coming into the church, that didn't matter how you lived your life as long as you became a Christian, because understand your Christianity, your spirituality had nothing to do with your physical body. So your physical body could do anything and everything would be okay. Paul says no. He says, as believers, we have to exercise ourselves towards godliness. We have to practice godly living, living in a way that is pleasing to the Father, living holy lives, doing the right things, saying the right things, not doing the wrong things, not saying the wrong things. We have to live holy lives. And that word holy is interesting because it means set apart, but it also means a transformation of character. It means that we've been made different, new creations. It's all about living a life that is pleasing to the Father. So I want you to think about that today, because all of us at some point in our lives, maybe even today, have some things that need to change. Maybe we're listening to old wives' fables, and maybe we're letting ourselves do things that we shouldn't do. Remember this: God is always there, helping you, guiding you, growing you, strengthening you. And all you have to do is turn to Him, and He will help you to overcome. So exercise yourself towards godliness today. We'll be back tomorrow, so be blessed.